Thanks. Okay, I can hear myself. That's good. They told me to do that. So today, this is not going to be a very buttoned up talk because I was telling them earlier, it's hard to come out when you're in school. Does that sound right to you guys? Is that okay? All right, sorry, I'm hearing an echo. I was just making sure it's right for you. So I was in school a couple years ago, right? And it was really hard to get me to come out to something like this. So thanks for coming out. And I promise this will be pretty entertaining because what we've done, I'm just going to tell you our story and some of the pivotal moments inside of our story and how we ended up taking an idea to a movement and how we're getting ready to scale this movement outside of Atlanta and across the country and across the world. So you guys are kind of in on the front end of what's about to happen, and this will be kind of fun for all of us. But Be Remedy started from just a really, really simple idea. Everybody I met my entire life, it didn't matter age, religion, creed, gender, who they were, from what part of the world they were from, in conversation, there was some piece of them that said, I would do something for somebody else. The problem is I just don't know how, or there's not a really easy way to do that. And in conversation, I'm like, well, why not, right? And so they said, here's the easiest way for me to help somebody right now, is to either text $10 to the next natural disaster, or to give up a Saturday and go volunteer for an organization that you may or may not love, and then you may get harassed by them afterwards. Right? And so my generation says, man, that's scary to me. I don't want to do that. And texting to a disaster, man, we're seeing like results of stuff years later, and where'd my money go? Or I want to make an impact in somebody's life. And so we set out with one simple idea, and it was to create the easiest way for you to help somebody else. And this is our model. Our model was to go into a local community and to partner with nonprofits that exist already. We love them. We're not trying to replace them. We want to partner with them. And they would send us needs. And they'd say, hey, Blake, look, we've got a middle school kid. He's got holes in their shoes. Their parents can't afford a new pair of shoes. Or, hey, Blake, we've got a single mom whose refrigerator went out. She can't afford a new refrigerator. She's got 3 kids. Their food's in an icebox right now. I believe that you would help your neighbor with that if you knew they needed it. You just don't know they need it. So our thought was to come around and ask you to follow us on social media. Follow Be Remedy, with the idea of what would your city look like if 500,000 people got a notification at the same time of an urgent need in the city, like a kid needs a pair of shoes. Surely we have the resources in every community to meet the needs of that community. And that was our belief. 2 weeks after that idea, Atlanta flooded. And this was Atlanta. So, if you've ever had an idea and felt like you had to act, I felt like I was going to get struck dead if I didn't act on this idea. And so I went down. There was no organization formed. I hadn't told anybody what was going on. I went down to this disaster. I took some pictures from my cell phone, and I found an organization. They said our biggest need right now is diapers. It's like, great, people will help with that. So I went to Twitter. I tweeted this. I said, just got word there's a huge need for diapers among Atlanta flood victims. If you can help, reply or contact Blake. Lesson 101 in social media, never put your phone number in a tweet, all right? Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever, don't do it. In this case, it worked out really well because my friends didn't know it was happening, but they said, hey, I'll retweet that. So they began retweeting it. My friends on Facebook said, I don't know what he's doing, but I'll repost that. Off of just one person, over 3,000 people heard our message. People from Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, South Carolina all sent money or diapers. We said, wow, this could work. From there, it led us to December. And what we did is I did 3 test runs for needs. That was test run number 1. That's better. That was test run number 1. Number 2 was we found some school social workers, and they said a big need for us right now. We had a cold snap where the high that week was 30 degrees. And they said, we need blankets for families that don't have heat. I said, great, we'll post that need. So we posted it, and people began sending us needs or sending us blankets, and it was a lot of fun. And here's the way that we're operating at the time. We're using Starbucks as drop-off locations, but we're not telling Starbucks, all right? So what I did is I went to Michael's, I got some $2 t-shirts, I got some iron-on letters, and I ironed Be Remedy on the shirt. Right? And the letters are probably crooked. I gave them to friends that lived in different parts of Atlanta, all over town. And what we did was when somebody said they wanted to give us blankets, I would have my friend that lived closest to them meet them at Starbucks, wear the shirt, tell the person, look for the guy in the Be Remedy shirt, so that we would intersect them before they got to the counter, right? And so it worked really, really well for a while. And one night, I went to meet somebody that I'd never met off of Twitter. And when I got to Starbucks, I was there 30 minutes early. I said, no way I'll miss her. She direct messaged me and said, hey, Blake, I got sick at work. I left the blankets at Starbucks. They're there waiting on you. And I thought, great, this is where we get in trouble. So I wait in line, and I stand in this really long line, and you guys have been in Starbucks on a cold night. It's like the windows are fogged up. It's packed. It's wall to wall. Everybody's in there waiting this long line. And I get to the counter. I said, look, I know this is really weird. I said, but do you have blankets for homeless people? And the lady was really loud. She's like, yes. She's like, you're the guy who's taking up blankets for homeless people. And I was like, well, kinda. Here's a real story. And she loved it. And the guy behind me didn't know, like, he heard the story and kind of overheard it. And he started one of those slow claps. He went, right? Like really awkward. Well, the guy behind him was like, man, that's kind of cool. He started one too. Before you knew it, the whole line was clapping. The whole place starts giving a standing ovation. I guarantee you the people in the back corner were like, did somebody just get engaged? What's happening? What are we clapping for? I don't know what's happening. And Starbucks loved it. And they said, look, you can use us as a drop-off location anytime you want. So your Starbucks is on the house anytime you come back. Thanks for doing what you're doing. And we thought, wow. We need to keep doing this. We need to figure out what this means. So it led us to December. This is September to December. And in December, I sit down with some guys that are way smarter than me, and I'm like, what do we do with this? And they said, well, we don't know how you make money, but the world needs it. Go do it. It's like, great. So I did. I kept going. And for Christmas that year, and this is the entrepreneur part of the story, right? Where I'm just like, just go for your idea and believe in it. For Christmas, I asked for a passport. Never had a passport before. I went and applied for it on December 23rd, and it came in the mail before New Year's. If you've ever applied for a passport, that's crazy. I didn't have it expedited. It showed up in the mail. A couple weeks later, earthquake happens in a place called Haiti. Unbelievable. The devastation was crazy. And I've never been out of the country before, and an organization that saw our work inside the Atlanta flood said, we've got a private jet to go into Haiti. We want you on it. So my first time out of the country was straight here. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what my capacity was going to be, but I knew I was going to use social media. So going in, part of our game plan was to transport this lady. She was 99 years old, and she lived through the earthquake. One of the team members with us, it was her great-grandmother. So we got to her, found her. We knew there was a house standing that she owned in a town called Grunguave, which is about 7 miles outside of Port-au-Prince. When we got to her, it turns out Haitians are never alone, and they had about 12 family members with them. We had a diesel mechanic. We fixed 3 broken down SUVs and drive a caravan through the jungle to Grunguave. When we get them to safety, this is their family. It was great. You can see more how frail she was there. But when we end up in Grunguave, we find a bigger issue. We find that over 100,000 people had either moved out of Port-au-Prince or they'd moved out of the hills behind there into this town, and nobody knew they were there. And I said, well, this is where we come in. So I went back to Twitter, and I tweeted this. I said, we're in Grunguave, 110,000 people, still have no food, water, or meds. Tweet anyone in Haiti who can help. So people began tweeting. People began Facebooking again. 250 people retweeted it in 30 minutes. Now, how many of you are on Twitter? Okay. So for those of you who aren't on Twitter, here's what happens. If you get one retweet, you're excited, right? You're like, hey, somebody just retweeted this. Like, you're excited. You're showing somebody. You're showing somebody a favorite. For Facebook terms, that's like getting 100 likes. All right, getting a retweet, getting a favorite is a big deal. So for us as a Twitter account with maybe 20 followers at the time, we get 250 retweets in 30 minutes, and people began to give us all the information we needed. Hashtags inside natural disasters will revolutionize disasters in the future. They just will. So what happens is somebody tweets us the coordinates of the town mayor and town doctor. I was able to put them in a vehicle with us. Somebody tweeted us the coordinates of the U.S. Marines. We drove to them off of GPS and said, we need help. And they said, yeah, you do. Meet with us at lunchtime tomorrow. So at lunchtime tomorrow, I sit at this table. Now to us, this table looks like nothing. In Haiti, this is a big deal. This guy is the head of all the tent villages for Haiti. This is the town mayor. The town doctor's hiding too. That's what I look like with no shower for 2 weeks. The head of the entire Haitian police shows up at the table. The head of all U.S. Marine operations. And 2 United Nations officials at this table. All because of one tweet. All because a group of my friends back in Atlanta said, hey, we'll follow a Twitter account, and even if we can't help, we'll repost a message. We'll repost it on Facebook, and we'll hit like so that other people see it. And this is the result. And it was the greatest day to be an American you've ever seen. The U.S. Marines said, look, we've got enough food to feed the whole nation of Haiti for a year. We just need a plan in place so our superiors will keep dropping food. And I said, great. I've got the town mayor and tent village guy. We're going to go to work. So we did. We sat down at about lunchtime. We laid out a plan before nightfall. We went back to the Marines and said, here's our plan. They said, great. Tomorrow, we'll give you a drop of food for 500 people. If that goes well, the next day we'll drop for 1,000 people. If that goes well, we'll drop for 5,000. And if that works, we'll carry your plan out. I said, great. The next day, here's the first helicopter drop full of food. It was surreal. It was amazing to watch this happen. I mean, I had tears coming out of my eyes watching this helicopter land. And after the first helicopter lands, we unload all the MREs, the meals ready to eat. And the head of the Marines walks over and puts his arm around me and he says, hey, Blake, he said, we've got a surprise for you. I said, yeah. He said, we're going to go ahead and drop for 5,000 people today. So as he's saying this, we're looking out and we're where we can see the ocean. And this just carrier comes out and just parks where we can see it, this huge ship. And what happens is there's a helicopter on it. And that helicopter is already loaded with food. And what happened is these helicopters just took off. They crossed each other in the air and landed. And every 30 minutes, they switched places, just unloading food. And a couple hours later, we're standing chest deep in MREs, and these just keep coming every 30 minutes. It was unbelievable. It was so much fun. And our campaign continued to go. We kept tweeting about what needs were and what was happening on the ground and where people needed help. And based off of that, a group called Samaritan's Purse tweeted us. And they said, hey, we're coming into town. We were able to meet up with them. And they were looking for a clean water source. And they found one. And so now they've built a clean water well in the town of Gronguab that's still standing today. A couple days later, a group called Doctors Without Borders, amazing organization where doctors around the world come together and they just come into disasters and just help people wanting nothing in return. And so they tweeted us and said, hey, we're coming in. And I said, great. So we hop in United Nations vehicles. It's kind of hard to see, but that's a UN sign on that Jeep right there. And we block off roads with UN vehicles and start landing planes full of doctors in the middle of this town. All because a group of friends had said, hey, I'll repost something on Facebook or Twitter. It was amazing. And then this story was amazing. We left Gronguab after about 10 days there, and all this work happened. It was kind of sustainable. And Be Remedy's piece isn't to create sustainability. It's to drive awareness and let organizations that do great work do great work. And so as we left Gronguab and went back to Port-au-Prince, we were getting ready to fly back out. We found out that this boy was having seizures in front of the palace. And so a couple days ago, we're networking the UN and all these major organizations. And the next day we drop everything because this little boy, one kid, is having seizures in front of the palace. We were able to tweet out the medication that he needed. A photojournalist found the boy inside this tent village, dropped a pin. We were able to find him with the medication and hung out with his mom until he stopped having seizures. And that's what he looked like. It was unbelievable. So when we left Haiti, we knew that we didn't solve the problems of Haiti, right? And so this is where the name Be Remedy comes into play. It's twofold. One, we know that we're not the answer to somebody's problems, all their problems. And that's why we partner with organizations that have systems to put them into programs to make sure they transition. We're not just giving them something, we're making sure there's a part of a system that transfers them to a better piece of life. The other side is that we wanted anybody to be a remedy. Whether it's a 6-year-old kid or it's a billion-dollar organization, anybody could be a remedy for somebody else by simply tweeting and simply responding when you can. So word began to spread. So we get back from Haiti, and I get back about 4 a.m., and there's emails waiting on me from 11 Alive here in Atlanta saying, we want to tell your story, be at the station at 5 a.m. I'm like, great. So I took my first shower in a couple weeks, headed straight down. 11 Alive told our story, and it was great, and it began to spread. Fox came out, and they began to tell our story. And our story spread, and it was a lot of fun. It was fun to see it all happen. And we were faced with the question that every entrepreneur faces. And when you start out as an entrepreneur and you're creating something, you have to write a mission and a vision statement behind it. And our mission and vision was to connect you to your neighbor. And I looked at this and I said, wow, we have an opportunity to scale really fast, go nationwide, go to disasters, do great work inside disasters. But that's not our mission. And so we decided we're not going to do anything else inside disasters. We're going to go back and we're going to connect you to your neighbor, because we want to do that all around the country and around the globe. And then when we do that, then we can unite, and then countries become our neighbors. And we can do this on a larger scale more effectively. So we pulled back and we tested it and risked all of the media attention, risked never growing again, and started telling stories like this. This is Miss Betty. She's a single caretaker of her 40-year-old Down syndrome son and her 2 great grandkids. And her refrigerator went out. And for me, this is the exact example that I use when I'm explaining the idea of Be Remedy. And it was real. And a refrigerator is a good thing to tell a story about, but when you're tweeting trying to get one, that's a big purchase for somebody. And it's really scary. And as an entrepreneur, you're scared to death that nobody's going to respond. And that if they don't respond, your idea is going to go downhill. And we posted this need. And in 5 minutes, somebody said, hey, we want to buy them a new refrigerator. So I got to go down and meet Miss Betty and sit with her family. And we went to Sears and picked out the refrigerator she wanted and got it delivered to her house. And when I walked in her house, this is her home. That's her in front of her new refrigerator. You guys have seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, right? A one-room house. That was her. The crazy thing about that for me was that was my hometown. It was Griffin, Georgia. And I had never driven past her house. In fact, I'd never driven past her side of town. And I think that's a lot of us. We have no idea the needs that are right around us. And that was the town that I grew up in. When I walked in, it was the kitchen was on one side and with the refrigerator, and then to the left there were a couple beds, and then to the left there was a rocking chair and a TV. That was her house. And I thought, these are the stories that we have to tell. This is what we have to keep doing. So we did. We find out about this family. They're an amazing group. We worked with a group, an organization in Atlanta called Lazarus Organization. They're a lot of fun. They throw a Super Bowl party for the homeless every year. They do some really cool stuff. And so we became friends with them and partnered with them. And this family was homeless, and they had all their children were born while they were on the streets of Atlanta. And the parents got into Lazarus. They helped them get jobs, went through this whole long program, and finally they were able to get jobs, get a home, and they were moving in, and they realized they didn't have beds. I said, perfect. So this is where we come in. So we posted a need for beds for this family. And somebody responded within 3 hours. And we had 2 beds for these kids. We had bunk beds. And I don't know if you've ever seen a kid that's never had his own bed before. Have you ever seen the look on his face when he gets his first bed? But I promise you'll never forget it. When that kid runs up to you and he's hugging you and he can't, he's never had his own bed. It wrecks you. And as great of storytellers as we try to be on social media for that story, it'll never replace you being there in person and seeing that kid. It wrecked me. I'm not an emotional guy, and it just messed me up. And so I tell this story all the time because of that kid. Because of that, because we stayed true to our vision, and we fought through and we risked not going the fast way, but going the slow and steady way, our story began to spread again. And out of these groups, it was really fun, but CNN's kind of the big boy in the picture, right? And CNN calls and they said, hey, we want to do a story. And we were still really young, we were kind of in our first year, and we're just kind of playing with this stuff. We're just tweeting the need every once in a while, and we're not official. We've got a team that meets out of a Starbucks every other Tuesday night, and just kind of figuring this thing out. And CNN said they wanted to tell the story, and I thought, we're going to do it, and here's why. Because when this goes out on CNN, we'll find the holes fast. Because no good deed goes unpunished, and we live in a world where people just want to destroy anything that's even great in the world in social media. So I said, as soon as our story comes out, we'll find out why we shouldn't do this tomorrow, if we shouldn't. And our story came out, and we got 1 piece of negative feedback. No, actually 2. 1, that we weren't outside of Atlanta. Number 2 is we didn't have enough needs. And I thought, we can solve both of those problems. Those are great. And that's all the negative feedback we had. So what happens is our team's working full-time jobs. And CNN ran a story on Sunday about us, and it was great. Well, what happened was on Tuesday morning, Twitter announced that it was their 5-year anniversary. CNN runs another story without letting me know. I wake up at 6 a.m. and my phone's exploding. I've got like 115 messages on my phone. I'm like, what's happening? I look at my phone, and CNN had ran a headline that said this on Twitter's 5-year anniversary. They named this one of the 3 best Twitter usages in the world. Number 1 was the Egyptian uprising, how they used social media to overthrow a government. Number 2 was Charlie Sheen. All right. A couple years ago, when he had his whole escapade, when he created a Twitter account, he had 2 million Twitter followers in the first 48 hours. And they talked about the power when 2 million people will follow you in 2 days to hear every word that you're saying. It's amazing. And number 3 was us. And our story began to spread. And so our team of volunteers, they all leave work. They call out. They come to my apartment. I'm just ordering pizza every couple hours to keep them happy. You know, we're just sitting there and we're tweeting out. We're trying to respond to every Facebook like that we get and every tweet that we get. And what happens when a CNN story runs like that is they call them crumbs. And so they run a story, and then the affiliate in New York will pick it up, and they'll run a story, and then in Texas and run the story, and then California. So we're able to see, hey, I think a story just ran here, and a story just ran here, and it's fun as a volunteer team to watch this stuff happen and go across the country. And somewhere around midnight, our team's exhausted. I'm like, y'all got to go to work tomorrow. I go home, and I'm sending them home. And as they're walking out, Jamie looks at me, and she goes, Blake, you got to see this. It's like, yeah. She shows me this. And I don't know what it says, but I think it's good because there's a thumbs up sign on the page. Right? And so our story began to spread around the world. And literally, it went there, and then that was the homepage of the social media club for Austria. And the story just continued to spread and continue to spread, and then we got to do a TED Talk. And that was a lot of fun. The TED community was amazing. They embraced it really well. And they said it was a great idea we're spreading, and we're humbled by that. It's a lot of fun. But just in light of kind of keeping this fun, that's kind of our story and what we do. But there's a couple things that I just want to unveil the curtain on that we said, hey, these were things that we wanted to separate ourselves in the market from. One was a quote that has driven me personally. It was said by a guy named Craig Rochelle. It said, to reach people no one else is reaching, you have to do things no one else is doing. So whatever market you're in, if you're in the business world, you're going to have a set of customers. But to reach the customers you're not reaching right now, you've got to do something new to get them. We're all watching Apple, for better or worse, do that with the 5C, right? I mean, it's like, why did they create a plastic phone? They're trying to reach a market that they're not reaching right now. So they're trying to do something they're not doing. So for our organization, one of the heartbeats behind creating it was, man, there's a lot of people engaged in philanthropy right now, right? There's millions of people, and there's tons of money that goes, billions every year. But my heart was, what if we can get the people that aren't engaged? What about the multi-millions that aren't engaged? If we could win them, then the people that are engaged will follow. Let's go after them. And part of the equation to do that was, we felt like, I left this out, that philanthropy needed a lifestyle brand. And what better company to do a lifestyle brand to model after than Red Bull? Red Bull is an ultimate lifestyle brand. It's you wake up tomorrow and say, I want to be a part of that. If you're an extreme sports person, you're going to look and act like Red Bull athletes because they've done it well. And so that's what we mean by a lifestyle brand. And so in philanthropy, I don't know anybody, as much as they love helping people, some of my friends do, wake up and say, man, I'm part of this, and wear their shirts and live that lifestyle every day. It's just kind of part of their life. And it's a part of their life they don't even share much. And so we said, let's follow Red Bull in that sense of the idea. And so we find out Red Bull is having a soapbox race in Atlanta. So think Little Rascals. You put 4 pieces of wood together, 4 wheels on it, push it down a hill, and hope it makes it to the bottom. In Atlanta, over 100,000 people come out to this. It's a huge deal. And so we try to think creatively all the time. We try to, in our team meetings, we're like, let's think 2020, and then let's scale back to what reality is, right? And so let's dream. And so when we heard this, I thought, wow, I said, here's an opportunity to get our name in front of 100,000 people. Let's just enter it for fun. Let's not help anybody. Let's just do it. And I get to our little team meeting that happens on Tuesday nights, and I sat down and I show them. We have another tagline that we say, here's something that could be great. Let's push the creative envelope and make it epic. And after I pitched the idea, they said, this is great, but it's not epic yet. And I'm like, what are you talking about? When we submitted this, when we submitted this, Red Bull calls me and they say, look, they're like, we don't work with nonprofits much. We love what they do. We don't work with them much. If you can put spinners on this thing, like in the picture, you're in. I said, yep, we'll have spinners hung up before they could say no, because I knew we weren't going to get them, and they knew we weren't going to get them. So we were one of the first nonprofits to ever get into this. And so I pitched my team, I'm like, man, we're innovative, this is awesome. And they're like, it's not epic yet. I'm like, man, what makes this epic? And we constantly push the envelope on that. So a couple of days later, I'm meeting with a group called Atlanta Mission. They're the Southeast's largest homeless organization, do amazing work. And I'm listening to their creative side and how they're marketing and what they're doing and their programs. And I find out that one of their programs, the homeless can opt in to a year-long program. And what happens is they go into this program, whatever their next level is in education, they go through that program. And then they also teach them trades, whether it's automotive, woodworking, whatnot. And then at the end of this program, they have a graduation and then they go get jobs. And I thought, man, that's brilliant. I thought, what if we take this opportunity to market ourselves and we market them instead? And as we started talking through, the game plan was this. When we found out one of the last steps of that program, they're like, we've got all the pieces figured out. We've got companies that hire them. The hard part is a suit for them for graduation and a suit for them to go to job interviews. Because typically, the ones that they get are ones that are in thrift stores that we go and pick up for a 70s party on Friday night. Right? It's like the houndstooth, it's the tweed, which are both coming back right now. But for them, if you wear a houndstooth suit to go get a job in, you're going to get laughed at. And that's what was happening to these guys. We said, here's a very easy way to impact these guys' life. So what we did is had them build our car. This is the team. The guy in the front he's one of the operators in Atlanta Mission, and the rest of them were homeless guys. So we put together a small team of guys that were going to build this thing. And that was part of their project. And what we did is we made a 4-part video series where we took a group in and we videoed their stories and what building this car meant to them and how it was going to create life change for them. So I told you, think Little Rascals. There's literally nothing to it. I was really scared to try it, so I made one of them try it the first time. Round 2, I finally went, and it was great. We had a lot of fun. These started going. And Red Bull calls us, and they said, look, we see what you're doing. Don't unveil your final product. We want to partner with you. We want to unveil it for you. So what happens is on Thursday before the race, we have this whole campaign laid out. Red Bull takes us to 11 Alive and has us unveil our car live on the air. And we all wear suits to represent the need that we were taking up. And we put the commuter dude live on the air, and he raced down it and tested the car live on air. And Red Bull loved it so much, they flew their stuff in 3 days early just to have it there for us. It was amazing. So we had a lot of fun, and we launched something after this called a Remedy Party. Teamed up with a group called Scout Mob in Atlanta. Great daily deal out, 50% off all your restaurants, all these restaurants in Atlanta. We offered 50% off at a restaurant for the night for people to come and give suits. So people started showing up the night before the race, and people are dropping off suits, and it was fun, it was great, and we put funny hats and stuff on people and took pictures. And then we started having interesting groups. This one group of really cool looking dudes walk up, and we're like, hey man, thanks for coming out. And they're like, yeah, we're from Oakley. Oakley has a car in the Red Bull race, and we saw what you were doing, so they flew us out early to make us bring suits to you guys. We love this. We still have a relationship. I'm friends with some of the guys at Oakley now because of this. And then this really sharp-dressed dude walks up, and I'm like, hey, man. I was like, what's up? And he's like, hey. He goes, I'm Usher's personal shopper. I'm like, yeah, you are. It's like, you need to be mine. And he brought out 20 suits that were just like sharp suits. I've never seen a suit like this in my life. And he goes, let's take 20 of the guys, put them in these suits, and then we'll take them back to Nordstrom, and we'll get them custom tailored for these guys. Unbelievable. All from a Remedy Party the night before the race. So race day comes, and this is our team. We put really funny glasses on. We just went out of the box. Nobody had a clue we were a nonprofit. They didn't know. They just thought we were cool. people just started bringing suits. They're bringing their kids out. This is what 100,000 people looks like on race day, and it goes for about half a mile, and then spills over into Piedmont Park, and there's a second video screen showing the race live. And the bottom right is the CEO of Atlanta Mission. His name's Jim Reese. He came out that day, and he gave me a hug, and he said, Blake, he said, look, this coming year, we're celebrating our 75th anniversary. So we've been around 75 years. We're the Southeast's largest homeless organization. But we've never been seen to this demographic in this light before. Because for the first time in 75 years, we're cool. He's like, thank you. I'm like, awesome. I gave him a hug. I said, let's go race. So we did. So once the race happened, we just acted like idiots. We put GoPros on the front and back of our car. We raced them down. And what happened was Red Bull was running a live blog. And for most people, it was just, hey, team so-and-so's going. Team so-and-so's going. We went, and they went crazy on us. And you have to do a 30-second skip before you push your car down the hill. And what we did is we brought out, for no good reason, a 7-foot giant penguin. I made my roommate be. And he came out, pushed our car off, danced in the skit with us. And as he pushed the car off the front of the hill, he fell off the front of the hill, tumbled all the way down, and we made ESPN's Not Top 10 list because of it. And so they documented all of that. And what we did is they told us before we pushed our car, they said, hey, look, we're pulling for you guys. You've got to finish big to get a good score. It's like, awesome. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to finish big. And as we're getting to the bottom of the hill, I leaned back to Josh. He's in the back seat, and he has no control over this. I said, hey, man, there's a wall in front of us. We're not going to hit the brakes. We're just going to hit the wall. And he's like, no! It's like, yeah, we are. So we crashed into a wall at like 25 miles an hour. Our car completely exploded. And so if you can remember in the car, that was our back fin that was completely ripped off, and that was the front nose of our car. Let's see if you can go back. The front nose. So you're seeing by my wheel is where that logo was. Our car was completely gone, and I was left holding a handle. That was it. So it was amazing. So we ended up providing the next 6 months of graduates from their program suits. It was unbelievable. So it was a lot of fun. So we really try to create a lifestyle brand out of what we're doing. And they said to leave time for questions, and I just want to tell you this. We've taken this model, and we've been working really, really hard on it. And from day one, from the CNN story, we've been asked, when are you going outside of Atlanta? And right now, we're working on a plan to do that. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And one of the things that we say is our vision has always been local, but it's never been small. And so we're going to take this local model as far across the world as we can in the next coming years. And we hope that you'll join us. And the other tagline that we say is, if a movement is to have an impact, it has to belong to those who join it, not those who lead it. Meaning that you have to embrace this. We can post needs all day long, but unless you believe this, unless you follow us, unless you retweet, unless you respond when you can, we go nowhere, and it makes no impact. So we're asking you to join us as we get ready to do this next step. And I think we'll impact people around the world in a way that's maybe never been done, or just a new model for doing it. And it'll be a lot of fun. So thanks for having me. This is how to follow us on social media. And what kind of questions do you guys have?
When you're starting out, you're going to Starbucks, and you're making t-shirts, are you paying for this out of your pocket? I mean, are you putting your own capital into this when you get started?
Totally. 100%. And there's obviously different models for doing that. They call it bootstrapping, when you just go and pay for it out of pocket. When I was working at a creative company before Haiti, and the guy knew what I was doing with Be Remedy. And the day that Haiti came, he saw the earthquake. He called me and said, hey, Blake, you're fired. Go do it. So I got rid of all of my expenses that I had before I got on a plane to Haiti. So when I came back, I spent the next 11 months couch surfing. I literally slept on friends' couches wherever I had a meeting the next day, or whatever we were meeting a need. I slept on some friends' couches in that town close by there. So it was all, until about a year later, we had somebody else to come in and begin helping fund us.
So did you always want to do social entrepreneurship? And if so, what was a pivotal moment in your life that kind of drove you into it?
Great question. Did you guys hear? Did you always want to be a social entrepreneur? And what was a pivotal moment? So no, I didn't always want to be a social entrepreneur. I was a baseball player, and I thought that's where I was going to go in life. We all have dreams. I really wish I was playing for the Red Sox the other night, but I'm not. So I didn't. It was never a dream. It was never attracted to me. In fact, it was really scary. And for me, I kind of have a life quote that I say, when you don't know what to do the next best thing. And I did. And so after baseball, I began working at a creative shop. I actually told them their sites were ugly, some friends of mine, and said they would look better if you did this to them, and their clients loved it. And so I ended up working my way in and learning how to do that. But a pivotal moment for me was working through that creative company and when social media came along. I honestly, when I saw Twitter, I thought, one, what's a Twitter, right? Number two, I thought, great, here's another place to find out that you just had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? And I was like, I don't have time for that. None of us do. And then I looked up and realized that this may be the greatest communication tool that the world's seen. You can communicate a message to millions of people at one time. And if they have notifications on, you're basically texting over 1 million people at one time. That's power. The other piece of the pivotal moment for me was growing up. There's a story where I was hanging out with a friend. And this is the piece that I'm saying, pay attention to your life. Some of the greatest social entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs in general, all of them are answering a problem. The social entrepreneurs are typically answering a problem that's internal, that resonates with them. And that's why they're driven to risk everything to make it happen. So for me, growing up, I was in middle school. I won't forget it. I was hanging out with some friends that lived in a really bad part of town. I wasn't able to spend the night there. And I was hanging out, and that day their refrigerator went out. And I remember the mom looking over and yelling at the dad saying, man, if you hadn't spent $50 here, we would have the money for this. And he shot back, well, if you hadn't spent $200 here, and they just began this huge fight. And I was really shy growing up. I would have never spoken in front of anybody. And I remember sitting there scared to death watching their parents fight. And I didn't know what to do with that. And later that night, I went and spent the night with a friend of mine named Ike. And they lived in the country club. And we were outside playing, and we walked in through his garage. It was like a 4-car garage, and as they opened it up, there were 3 refrigerators sitting in there. And his dad was a hunter, and he was just storing meat in there. And I remember thinking, these are really good people. They would give that if they needed it. Regrettably, I never said a word. I was shy. I was scared to death. And I didn't realize that was a pivotal moment in my life until years later when Be Remedy came along, and somebody asked me that question, and I thought, that was a moment that shaped me, and that was probably subliminally why I use the refrigerator illustration. But if you're looking at social entrepreneurship at any level, look at your life, look at what you're passionate about, because that's going to be what helps drive you to answer a problem when there's no resources around to make it happen.
Do y'all do anything at
Have some water.
Christmas time?
Oh, great question. Do we do anything at Christmas time? We do. Right now, we are kind of we do every year for Christmas, we do certain things. This year, we're just going to keep doing what we do right now because we're working really hard on our next steps. So we'll continue to post needs, and one of our models is to post 1 need a week, and it's typically on Thursdays. And so everybody kind of knows when to look for it. We rally behind it. During Christmas, depending on how many needs we have, we could go to multiple needs in a week. But we're just going to stay on point and continue to create momentum for our next step. And then next year, look for some fun stuff for Christmas.
You mentioned your funding. How are you funding?
It's a great question. How are we funding? We're figuring that out, honestly. We're in the middle of figuring it out. We've had some generous people along the way that have put some in. We're looking at some strategic partnerships that will create revenue streams inside of what we're doing. And just a really small stream that we started doing in the beginning was simply, I don't think I told you this, when we post a need, you can either give an item that you have, or we use Amazon wish list. So you can do a 1-click purchase and they have it in 2 days. So we have people around the country right now purchasing items. So we get a small kickback from Amazon, but that's obviously not sustainable at this point.
We know it before, and I'm a professor here, so I guess listening to your stories, it just reminds me of my hopes for my students is that, number one, they could get a job at Oakley, they could get a job at a creative company who could let them go to follow their dreams, that they could have a job that would provide them a paycheck to be able to buy a suit for a homeless person. But I don't know that I can really pull them out and make them see their future or their potential. So do you have any words of wisdom, since you obviously were a student, that can kind of help us as faculty lift our students up?
Wow. You needed a mic for that. No, you needed a mic for that. And that's a question that we almost all should unite around as professors, as students, people in the city. How do you allow somebody at this stage of life to see potential for the rest of their life so that they can make an impact, right? And so whether it's, I'm a believer that whatever, here's my take on it. Social entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. But what is for everybody, the thing that I found for people that are successful, they find that they have a couple skill sets that you have potential to be great at. And what you need to do is take your skill sets, and if it's accounting, whether you're a great business person, whether you're great with, any of these fields that you go in, be the best that you can in that role. Because as a social entrepreneur, the greatest lesson that I learned was not to be a jack of all trades. I thought when we started this, man, I've got to get good at accounting. I've got to get good at all these things that I'm not great at. And I realized all you do is simply stay inside your skill set and put a group of people around you who are great at things that you're not. And so if you become the best accountant that you can and you find out, man, here's a cause that I'm crazy excited about, take your accounting skills and just tag it on. Either go to work for them or work for a company that has, or volunteer your time outside of that to make sure that somebody that was in my shoes has somebody, they're not falling on that side of things. So my piece to you would be the best thing that you can be, and take your skill sets and use them for someone else. Yeah. Anything else?
Every need that comes across B Remedy has always been fulfilled?
Yeah, luckily to date, every single need we posted has been met. So we hope to keep that track record. Our next step will create a stream of needs. So it'll change a little bit. Our model will change a little, but the heartbeat will stay the same. But to date, every single need's been met. And we have a lot coming up. So if you guys would, I'll just point blank ask you, join us. And if you can help, respond. And if you can't, just share the message. We'd love for you to join us.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
Did you have any opposition from like family members or like parents when you were first starting out? I mean, you said you lived like on people's couches. Were people ever telling you like, you're crazy, what are you doing to your life?
Yeah, they did. Did people ever tell you were crazy? Or did you get opposition from your family? Yeah, you did. Luckily, my family was supportive. They didn't understand, and they were scared to death. Honestly, they just sat me down and said, Blake, like, you've got to figure out revenue stream. You've got to figure out how to make yourself sustainable. And I knew I did, and that was part of it. The other thing that I got from a lot of businessmen at the time was that this is the wrong time to do it. The economy is in a downturn. People don't have excess money or items to give. Like, your model's going to fail. It's not going to go. And you have to listen to people that are smarter than you. You have to. Experts in the field, you have to listen to them. If you believe in your gut, go for it. But I would say don't risk everything. Don't risk literally everything. Yeah. Great.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Certainly appreciate Blake being here. I'll tell you what, Blake, is there one more question? Anybody got one more question? Give you an opportunity.
I mean, I could ask about that. You know what I'm saying? It's just me and Blake here. I was just wondering, I've been following, and I'm a little behind on the news with the Twitter IPO, and how do you think that's going to affect the Remedy? Just because, in our classes we talk about the debacle of the Facebook IPO, so, there's a lot of stuff riding on Twitter, and so I just,
Yeah, so the question is, how is Twitter's IPO that they're facing potentially going to affect B Remedy? A lot of that's going to affect Twitter more than it's going to affect B-Remedy, but B-Remedy is affected because we leverage Twitter. So what you typically see around these times is these companies scrounging to create products to build users. If they do that successfully, if they create a better experience, they create more engagement, then it's a win for B-Remedy. If they change things too much and users fall off, then B-Remedy's at risk. So this is why we've done a partnership with a development company. And so we've been building our own new website, our own tool. And the whole purpose of that was because we looked up a couple years ago, and Facebook changes algorithms all the time. So I don't know how familiar you are, but what's in your news feed changes every couple weeks. And so from an organization standpoint, there's groups that have millions of followers or likes on Facebook, and they can't hit your news feed. So if you go and like us on Facebook today, it doesn't mean you're ever going to see our post. Facebook now says it's got to be engaging to you for you to care about it, for it to show up in your feed. So when we post a need, it's tricky for us because people aren't going to like that post. Here's a middle school kid without shoes. Everybody's not liking that, right? So Facebook deems it as irrelevant and it doesn't hit a news feed. So basically Twitter, Facebook, any tool that we're going to leverage, we're at their mercy and there's always risks. So we're trying to develop our own backbone and leverage them in ways that we've always leveraged them, but the core of us is not at risk. So, but I have a lot of opinions on Twitter's IPO too.
Let's thank him again. I got one question I want to ask the group here, and this is kind of be a measure of success of this, I guess. How many of you are going to go away today a little changed in how you view the world and how you view what your place is in the world? How many of you? I think that's cool. I think that's a good outcome, and I think that's what Blake is looking for as well. So do what he said, go like him, do all those kind of things, make him even more popular than he is, because you can see he's a cool guy, he's doing a cool thing, and I really think it has a great future. Why? Because he is so passionate about it and is planning and making sure that he has a structure to carry it out. So thank you once again for coming, and that's it.